If you are like most podcasters, you might be hesitant to do solo episodes. That is completely normal. It is normal to think, I'm going to have a podcast and I'm not going to be talking very much in the mic by myself. Podcasting by yourself is difficult, especially if you don't have someone that you know is already listening or you don't have a producer that you can talk to throughout the episode. It can be a struggle. But if you want to grow your thought leadership or you want to show up as an expert in your industry, it is imperative. Let's get into it. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Successful Podcasting Unlocked. I'm your host, Alicia Galati. I'm the founder of Galati Media, a full-service podcast management agency where we help business owners launch and maintain lead-generating podcasts. Today's question is, should I be doing solo episodes? Of course, you know my answer is yes, you should be doing solo episodes, but it's really important that we're being strategic about it. If you've been listening to this podcast or you've been listening to my sister podcast, Listeners to Leads, then you've probably seen that as the years have gone by and as my time has gone by as a podcaster, I have shifted in my decisions on how often I show up solo. The first year of Listeners to Leads, I did a cadence of switching back and forth between solo episodes and between guests. And anytime that I had a lapse in the number of guests that was available to me, I would throw in a bunch of solo episodes. This allowed me to make sure that my podcast was being consistent without having to worry about managing guests or figuring that out. Then it got to a point where I decided that I was going to do more solo episodes than guest episodes. But there's so many guests that wanted to be on my podcast. So then I decided that I was going to do an every other cadence like I did at the beginning. And now I have shifted to an almost exclusively guest show on Listeners to Leads. I only come in for solo episodes when I have something that I want to talk about that goes longer than my expected 10 minutes on this show. But my audience still has space to listen to me in solo episodes using this podcast. What I love about having a solo podcast is that it allows me to be the expert in my industry, be the expert in my knowledge. And then also having Listeners to Leads, which allows me to get in front of my ideal clients, get in front of my ideal listeners by interviewing podcasters, hearing their stories, listening to how they have unique perspectives, hearing what their struggles are, because then that helps me with my solo content that I then can use to create more content. It makes it great. That said, let's break down why you should have a solo podcast. First and foremost, it allows you to share your unique perspective. You are the only person that has your unique perspective. What I mean by that is not that you are the only expert that can help people. You are the only expert in your field that can help people the way that you do, using these skills that you have. No one else in your industry has had that specific life to have those specific skills. So when you have a podcast and you only interview guests, you're highlighting them. You're talking about their expertise. You're talking about their unique perspective. But what about yours? Your listeners? And I don't bet, but I would put money on this. Your listeners are probably dying to hear from you. They want to know what your perspective is. They want to know what your thoughts are on the topic. And if you can't strategically tie that in without stepping on a guest's feet while you're talking to them, then you need to have solo episodes. Share your unique perspective. What this also allows is it allows your audience to feel connected with you in a really deep way, which is really awesome. It allows them to say, oh my goodness, I went through that too. Or, oh, I have felt that before. That is the power of giving your unique perspective. The second thing that it allows you to do is it allows you to really go deep into your expertise. It allows you to show to your audience that you know more than just surface level content or surface level topics. You actually know what you're talking about. That is the power of solo episodes. If you're only having interviews, you can't really share that. You can't really express that. And that is why you need to be having solo episodes, especially if you're trying to grow your thought leadership or your business. The third thing it does is that it allows you to build trust between you as a host. You're being vulnerable. You're sharing about your struggles. You're sharing about how you help your clients. And it builds that trust with your listener to know, yes, I can trust their perspective on this because they know what they're talking about. You might be thinking, well, what about? And I get it. It can be difficult to get in front of a microphone. One thing that you can do that we had a guest on the Listeners to Leads podcast share is you can put a picture of someone right behind your camera and talk to that person. Who is that ideal client? What do they look like? What are their struggles? What are they feeling? And when you talk to them, talk to that person. It's going to allow you to show up even better. Or another way, hire a producer that you can talk to throughout the episode to feel comfortable and confident that they're on the other end and they are listening. This allows you to get out of your head a little bit and say, this doesn't have to be perfect. I know there's someone on the other side who's going to clean this up and make it sound great. And also I can converse with them on the episode. And that won't end up in the final episode, but it feels more comfortable for me. Or maybe you don't want to feel self-promotional. You don't want to talk about what it is that you offer. Guess what? There are people who do what you do and they do it terribly and they are loud. They are so loud. Your audience deserves you. They deserve your perspective. They deserve your quality of work. And by not talking about what it is that you do or telling them how they can work with you, you're actually doing them a disservice. So don't feel like all you're doing is promoting or talking about what you do. You're helping them. The content that you're providing, they can say, I don't want to listen to this episode anymore, or I don't want to listen to this podcast anymore. You're not dragging someone by the ear and making them listen to your show. They're choosing to be there. So give them quality content. And that quality content is you. Give them more of you. Maybe you don't have enough space for solo episodes. Here are some options and some ways that you can integrate solo segments within your podcast. So we've seen people do it this way, where they have a setup at the beginning of the episode where they talk through what is to come in the episode. And during that space, they share their unique perspective about the topic before you dive in. What this allows you to do as a host is paint the conversation in a certain lens to say, this is my perspective, or this is how I feel about this topic, or this is why this topic is important for you as a listener. And it shows that you're an expert in knowing why this topic is important to your listeners and how it can impact their lives. Or you can have something at the end of the episode where you do almost a hot take section where you tell your audience that just listened to this episode, here's your perspective. Here's how you have implemented this in your life or with your clients. This still allows you to host someone while sharing how you are an expert and how you can help people. The third way is that you can have a completely different episode that is shorter, that is solo episodes. Maybe you come in with a take on the episode that is about to air or about the episode that just aired. You can talk about how it inspired you or what you did. While that's great, and while these ways to integrate this into your format are great, I highly recommend that you still drop hints and drop your knowledge and your experience to help your audience make a decision to work with you. That is what you're doing, right? As a business owner, as a podcaster, your goal is to generate leads with your show to have a successful podcast. The way to do that is to tell people how to work with you, to encourage people to turn from listeners, passive listeners, into hot leads. That's what we want. With that in mind, if you are struggling with solo episodes or you are struggling with coming up with ideas for solo episodes, I highly recommend that you book a strategy session with me. We can talk through all of this, work through this process with you, get some ideas down on paper, and really be able to get you outside of your own head and cheer you along the way. If you have your own podcasting questions that you would like answered on the show, please feel free to reach out at Successful Podcasting Unlocked. You can go there, leave your question. Also find me on Instagram. Until next time, happy podcasting.